The Twin Brothers, an interpretation. The Twin Brothers is a Czech fairy tale, and there are some obvious similarities or parallels to Prince Lindworm, which is from Norway. There is a magical rose bush at the beginning of both tales, and of course the fact that both stories tell a tale about twin brothers, which always represent two aspects of the same person. In Prince Lindworm, the two brothers represent the light side, i.e. the conscious side versus the dark side of the shadow, the unconscious side. I don't think this clear-cut dichotomy works here in the twin brothers' tale. The both brothers differentiate very little from each other. Both brothers are bold and adventurous. Seeing the Black Castle, they react exactly the same way. They get on their horses and ride directly towards it. But I get ahead of myself. Let's start at the very beginning. The story starts with a talking fish. This reminds me of the fairy tale The Fisherman's Wife by the Grimm brothers. There, the caught fish turned out to be a powerful but enchanted sorcerer. In the twin brothers, the fish is also enchanted. Otherwise it wouldn't talk. But it doesn't seem to have any magical powers except the ability to predict the future. And even more surprisingly, it doesn't plead for its life, but only asked for dignified burial, which emphasizes its basically human nature. But what does it mean? I think the enchanted fish stands for those things we wish for, and when we finally get them, they turn out to be even more than we wished for, granted that we are willing to sacrifice our original wish. In both tales, the original intent was to catch the fish either for self-consumption, like in the Twin Brothers, or for selling them on the market, like in The Fisherman's Wife. So the nameless woman cannot eat the fish to satisfy her hunger. She must endure her physical hunger in order to satisfy a greater wish, to become mother to two wonderful boys. So the fish in this story stands for all those things we want, but have to do without for a greater good. In psychology, we call this mechanism delayed gratification. Think of the marshmallow test by Walter Mitchell, 1972. The interesting aspects of the story are the two magical swords, which are birthday presents even before the twins are born. My interpretation is that those magical swords represent the talents each child is born with. For example, one child is drawn towards music, another to the graphical arts, etc. A sword is a weapon, so it's fairly obvious that the talents of those unborn children lay in the martial field. In other words, they are born fighters. And one needs both courage and aggression to be an excellent fighter. Aggression usually gets a lot of bad press these days, because we mistake aggression with brutality. This is a fundamental mistake. Gandhi was a fighter for Indian independence. Everything worth fighting for needs aggression. But he chose a non-violent method in order to fight his fight. Aggression is what drives you. It is a psychological term because it acts within your psyche. Brutality or violence is, on the other hand, a behavioral term. It exists outside our psyche, as such observable. Of course, there is a link between aggression and violence, because the first often leads to the latter. But not always, as the example with Gandhi always exemplified. Another example would be a lawyer who fights for the rights of his or her client. Lawyers are the incarnation of the medieval champions who fought in behalf of their sovereign. We have exchanged the swords and lances with law books and rhetoric. Besides the choice of weaponry, we still need aggression in order to fight. I call it the warrior spirit. Okay, so much about the significance of the magic swords in this story. Unsurprisingly, young Andrew sets out in search of adventure, quite accordingly to his inborn martial talents. Then, in the deep forests, where he gets lost, he meets the lion. Most readers would expect an epic fight between Andrew and the lion at this place of the story. But their bloodthirst is disappointed. The lion joins Andrew and later assists him in his fight with the dragon. I would go even as far as to claim that Andrew needs the help of a lion in order to defeat the dragon. So what do we learn about the lion and what is his significance? We learn that it is brave and strong, and those are exactly the qualities a warrior needs if he or she wants to be successful. We also know that the lion is an animal. That's obvious. But often we keep overlooking the obvious because, well, we take the obvious for granted. Here's my interpretation. Andrew has to connect with the positive side of his animal nature, which is represented as strength, courage, and aggression, i.e., the warrior spirit, in order to fight the negative side of the animal nature, which is represented by the dragon, which stands, at least in the European tradition, for greed. Different from the Far Asian tradition, the dragon in the European storytelling tradition is either guarding a hoard of gold, which symbolizes greed for material wealth, or the dragon, like in this and the Prince Lindward story, devours attractive virgins, which stands for sexual greed. So the young hero defeats his inner dragon, i.e. his inner greed. He progresses on his passage towards full adulthood, but he isn't quite there yet. He also has to unite with the feminine principle, which is represented by the beautiful princess. But there remains one major obstacle. Someone else claimed his victory, and with that, the hand in marriage of the king's daughter. In a way, we witness in the story the above-mentioned transformation from the physical fight to a legal fight, which is fought with rhetorical means. So the second fight shows the sublimation of the raw aggressive energy of the fighter into the more refined and civilized fight of a lawyer type. Finally, the treacherous woodcutter is also defeated and the way is free for the union with the feminine principle. Most fairy tales end with this exact scenario, a royal wedding. But it makes this story so interesting that it doesn't end here, where it's supposed to end. We only have reached the midpoint of this narration. Everything that follows is pretty much in exact symmetry to its first half. Andrew's twin brother Anthony pretty much exactly repeats his brother's journey. Well, there isn't a dragon to defeat anymore. This was already taken care of by his brother. But he enters the same inn, speaks with the innkeeper like his brother. He meets and speaks with the princess like his brother. Like his brothers, he sees the Black Castle in the distance, and like his brother, he decides to travel towards it. He sees the petrified knights, like his brother, and like his brothers, he is nearly petrified himself. The similarities are overwhelming, but the manifold of similarities makes the one or two differences stand out even more significantly. A. Anthony doesn't sleep with the princess. B. Anthony doesn't allow the witch to enchant him. Both events seem fundamentally different. In the first, he meets a young and attractive woman. In the last, he meets a very old and very unattractive woman. But maybe those seemingly opposite events have more in common than the first observation grants us. Both events include the element of enchantment. First, there is the sexual enchantment coming from the attractive princess, and then comes the dangerous magical enchantment from the old witch. And in both challenges, Andrew proves to be steadfast. I think we come to the core lessons of this story. Remember what I said at the beginning of this interpretation? That both twin brothers represent two sides of the same person? That means Andrew represents a less mature version of the Andrew Androtheid entity. Remember, Anthony is no wimp. He has just defeated a 9-headed dragon single-handedly. He also defeated his treacherous rival in a brilliant rhetoric battle. And he even marries a princess. But still, something is still missing. This something left him incomplete. So what differentiates Anthony from Andrew? We have already established that both brothers underwent exactly the same journey. Both saw the petrified knights. But did both brothers really see the same thing? Anthony clearly saw the danger those petrified knights signify. Andrew, on the other hand, saw only pretty statues. They saw the same thing, but at the same time didn't see the same thing, because each of them gave what they saw a different meaning. This itself is a great lesson, that each of us sees theoretically the same thing, but practically gives them a different meaning. A chess champion looks at the same chessboard as a novice, but sees completely different things, i.e., he comes to completely different conclusions. One could also say, yes, Andrew is indeed brave. But not seeing the danger one is in is also terribly stupid and naive. His courage, which was such a great asset while fighting the dragon, turned into a liability while he was confronted with a danger he clearly underestimated. Again, he saw only a nice old lady sitting by the fireside, apparently afraid of his unleashed dog. Let me stress here that one shouldn't take those fairy tales literally and start slaughtering old ladies. The witch here is only a symbol for a great danger, more specifically the danger of petrification. I find the way of enchantment significant. What does it mean to be petrified? It could mean being afraid. But I believe that is a red herring here, because we have already established that Andrew was very brave. And so were the other knights who decided to come to the Black Castle. No, I think when a person turns into a stone or a rock, it means that he or she becomes rigid in his or her thinking or attitude. This happens to the best of us in old age. We lose our flexibility and elasticity. Not only our limbs become stiff, our brain cells as well. And this is a great danger indeed. I know a lot of old folks who do nothing but complain that everything used to be better and the world goes to hell into a handbasket. In Buddhism, there is a term of the beginner's mind. I like this term a lot, because it is exactly the opposite of the adage, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. A beginner's mind stays curious and open a life long. It wants to learn, explore and understand. It never becomes complacent. Somehow Andrew became rigid in his thinking and in his behavior. He needed his better half Anthony to save him from this danger. And then there's a second and final union with the feminine principle. But this is the usual way those stories end. The interesting part is the overcoming of Andrew's naivety and the rescue from Andrew's mental petrification. The old hag inside Andrew's mind is defeated. He regains his mental flexibility, and now he is reunited with the feminine principle. The perfect ending. The curtain falls.